as always. And in the audience, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
He didn't start yet.
A dear friend of Conversations, that's being Reverend Joseph Ben David. He's been a guest a number of times. He's a dear and close friend of mine and of the world. He's a philosopher, and he is the Reverend of the foundation, the Humanist...
The Church of Humanism.
Church of Humanism.
And the Humanist Foundation.
And the Humanist Foundation. And we're going to be talking about humanism and larger systems of understanding the larger issues of the human condition within a large universal context. And Joseph, it's so good to see you. Welcome. I wonder we've got some photographs we're going to show out of your life where I'm looking forward to putting them up for the camera and so forth, but I wonder if maybe we could. We spoke briefly on the telephone, setting this up and so forth, and I said, well, we're going to be talking this week about evolution, about the scientific understanding of man's role in terms of evolution in this, and you said that you're a humanist, which is a big term, and everything, and you said you got 3 ways in which you can see that. I wonder if maybe you could spell that out for us a little bit. Humanism, it's a big term, but there are various takes on what a humanist philosophy takes one to in terms of understanding the larger issues. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what do we mean by a humanist, and what are some of the variations of humanist philosophy that is characteristic under the rubric of that name.
There are many definitions of humanism, and the definition which I am using is that humanism is the ultimate concern for the human condition in the universal sense.
Okay.
You know, these are words.
Yes,
so,
right.
you know, really, words, yeah. I'm a prisoner of words like anyone else.
Yes, we all are. Yeah.
But it means something to me. And if people understand the meaning of the word, the ultimate concern, it's really the religion of reality, in a way. See?
A religion of reality. Okay,
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when we are talking about concern, it means the ultimate caring.
Well,
but,
universal concern.
But universal and the ultimate, so that this is the major concern of the humanist. And anyone who is concerned in that way, in my opinion, is a humanist, or in my definition. See?
Okay.
Now, I'm a 3-dimensional humanist.
Okay.
Depending how you define the word God or the word religion. See?
Okay.
If you define the word God as the biblical God or any other kind of a supernatural, what they call God, then I am an atheist, because I don't believe that a God of the Bible exists, or that it's anything that makes sense.
Okay.
As a you know,
as many people do believe in various ways.
So in that way, I am an atheist, you know, and I'm a clear-cut atheist in that sense. But I am not only an atheist, I am also an agnostic humanist, which means that I believe in the scientific method, and the word God is not so important to me. In other words, don't bother me with that, you know? But it's there, and some people believe in it, some don't believe it, you know. But my main concern is the scientific method, see?
All right.
And rational thinking, rationality.
A child of the Enlightenment?
Enlightenment, if you want to say.
Yeah, it goes back further, but yeah.
And then there is a 3rd dimension,
really?
And that is the dimension of naturalistic, rational, emotive theism. Theism, not deism.
I think a
theism,
lot of the
T-H-E-I.
D.
Not D.
Oh,
T-H-E.
Oh, not like deist.
Not deist.
No.
Theist.
Theist, okay.
God.
Yeah, okay,
see?
Right.
Now, this is the least known philosophy. because it's very easy to be an atheist. All you have to say is, I don't believe in God, and God doesn't exist, and leave me alone.
And
right?
now we can understand things. We're smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Naturalistic humanism has to do with a belief in the creative power of nature. That there is that nature itself has, so to say, two stages. The lower stage is the stage of the predatory and parasitic existence, where everything automatically, grows and then decays, and the stronger overpowers the weaker because they want to, survive, so they have to kill the others, and there's this kind of a jungle-like, wild environment.
Right. Okay.
And this is one level.
Yes.
But then there is another level, and that is the level where this basic jungle environment is transcended through science, through love, through a philanthropic kind of an attitude, where first of all, animals cooperate. They create, so to say, sociological entities, of course,
Ants are very organized.
where animals display a high intelligence. In some areas, really have senses much better developed than human beings.
Really?
Well, for example, the sense of vision of a bird is much better than what the bird sees when he is up, when we are in the airplane, is something else than what we see.
I know, it's true.
You can see a little mouse.
I wouldn't want to compete in swiftness with a cheetah.
Right,
who might be running me down as prey.
Exactly. So we have, if we have the humility to see our humanity in its, proper, so to say, dimension, we can see ourselves with much more, how should I say, appreciation.
Yeah,
of our limitations.
Our limitations.
Rather, than being egomaniacs and saying, we are.
Yeah.
We are certainly in many ways in the development, a very high development.
It would seem that way to me. And you were talking those things. There were humanist is humanoid involved with the human, the human experience, or even the hominoid experience. And I don't know, you were talking about other creatures are very well relating one to another. Ants do have colonies that work very well together. Beavers do build dams even.
No, of course.
They even extend their ability to make the environment different than in
Maybe they even know something about the geosophic, domes.
Oh, geodesic. Geodesic. That's Mr. Fuller.
Right.
But it does seem to me, I'm not sure. I would just tell you, we're doing some programming this week about consciousness and evolution and that sort of thing. And we have an understanding, an intellectual understanding, which is part of consciousness. And one of the week's program this week is going to end with Michio Kaku talking about the telescope array that was going to take a measure of the Big Bang, which we can now hypothesize about the whole universe, within a nanosecond of its occurrence 13.8 billion years ago out of CERN. Apparently it's been defunded and everything given the current situation.
It's marvelous.
But that's a pretty marvelous capability for a mental process, a consciousness, to take the measure of things. And I'm not at all sure that I wonder what you think, whether there are other creatures that can be in that situation. It seems to me a crocodile or a creature is not going to encounter the world with that self-reflective consciousness that seems to me to be the lot of humanity, for good or ill, to have been blessed with through the evolutionary process. It seems to me.
Well, human beings, in one respect, are really unique because they combine three qualities, and that is the quality of reason, the quality of love, and the quality of intuition. Now,
Love,
these three things together,
intuition, those are three big things. Yeah,
these,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
these three elements combined together represent what can be humanistically called the spirit, which is, in my, definition in the context as I am using it, which is the expression, the creative expression of the existential being of a person.
I wonder,
These
love,
three things.
or I see love.
You see.
Love is a big word. There is maternal affection or feeling between a cat and a kitten, between a whale and the calf.
Yeah.
The cow. There is love in a certain sense manifest.
Well, this is kind of a romantic concept, but you are talking.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a concept of love as was developed by Erich Fromm.
Oh, wonderful.
You see, and there, love is not just this overwhelming feeling, which very often may be very neurotic, and people can kill because of that.
Yes, indeed.
You know,
Yeah, right.
Jealousy and all kinds of things, rejection and so on, commit suicide because they were rejected in love.
Yeah,
you
it
see,
happens
right?
with
So
alarming regularity.
he defines love differently. He defines love as, first of all, caring for the other person and caring for oneself. Respect. Without respect, if we just sort of have a condescending attitude towards people, there is no love. See, respect, understanding, which he understands even in depth, understanding the unconscious, which is a new thing, with Sigmund Freud, right? Understanding and joy. If there's no joy, if there's only bitterness, if there's only, suffering and nothing that produces the high of a, enjoyment, so then you cannot love.
But these are characteristics of the hominoid. We're talking about human beings.
We are talking about human beings.
And we're also, and you also were an associate of Martin Buber, who wrote I
Well,
and
that's
Thou.
yeah, sure.
You can have an I-object relationship to another, or you can have an I-thou relationship.
Right.
And that's something that seems to be, what I'm trying to do is we've spent a good deal of our time scientifically since the Enlightenment, in a certain sense, trying to understand nature, our role within it and so forth, and differentiating ourselves in a certain sense from the rest of the biological process, in a sense. That's what we've done.
Yeah.
In the modern experience, now we might get to it and everything, is we now have the ability to extend our consciousness, it seems to me in a certain sense, in a unique way, into the environment through technology and tools, which is now the main way in which modern man is differentiating himself from, it's the difference between the institutions we've inherited and those that we've created. We've created a new world through technological extension, and that's something that's pretty unique to us, it seems to me. And one other thing, I had a thought the other day, and it probably applies to things in general, but we understand now, like we couldn't have a couple hundred years ago or so forth, we understand now the evolutionary process, and we've got it, and so like we're apparently, I just had my DNA read, I had it done and so forth, and through the DNA research and understanding that Homo sapien appeared apparently in this world, which is, I guess, about 4.5 billion years, 3.8 billion years of the beginning of organic evolution itself, and we appeared about 200,000 years ago as a species in Africa. We understood that. Now, our species was contained within, let's say, 4 million years ago, was contained within Australopithecine that was evolving up the hominoid line. We were in the future. in terms of the state of consciousness that was characteristic of that. And then they transferred, they had a qualitative, punctuated equilibrium, a new species appeared, Homo habilis, and we come from that. But what I'm trying to get at is there's a sense of the future is contained within a context in terms of time, and we've reached a point now where we're taking the measure of the universe that wouldn't have been possible to an early Homo sapien, much less somebody 200 years ago. They wouldn't have been able to have the technological capability or intellectual capability of taking the measure of things in an intellectual sense.
Well, Buckminster Fuller.
Yes, God bless him.
He was, talking about it that during the 70s we achieved a certain point in history where humankind can actually overcome its worst expressions like wars and poverty and, the negative features of history.
Yes.
He was probably
existential new reality.
He was not aware of what development took place in the 80s, 90s.
That's right. He passed in 1983.
Yeah, about. Right,
so
right.
There wasn't much of the cyber stuff that is so
right.
important now.
So now we know even much more than that.
Much more, and it's coming exponential.
Now the question is, what are we going to do with that?
And, or what's the implication of it in evolutionary
Well,
terms?
I tell you,
yeah.
that's what I can see two, so to say, attitudes in that respect. One attitude is towards technology.
Right.
And that, means the invention of the most primitive mechanisms to the most complex scientific instrumentalities.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the humanization of people. These two things, these two directions.
We're being differentiated by our relationship to the technology increasingly in the modern era.
Unless these two can be combined, technology and the humanization, we are lost because it's like a contradiction within the organism.
Okay,
See?
In punctuated equilibrium, as I understand, we're going to air a program after this from '96 with Mr. Eldridge, who is the co-founder of with Stephen Jay Gould of Punctuated Equilibrium, understanding the new appearing within the evolutionary process. But that you want to, we have reifying, or we have an institutional structure that's built up within a certain condition. When you said Buckminster Fuller said that we may, you could summarize it in a sense as saying that we're not only got weapon systems that apparently can destroy the entire species for the first time since about 1970, just yesterday, just now.
Right.
Isaac Asimov, we did a program with, he said, this is the defining generation.
Absolutely.
You could have lived 600 years ago, it took all kinds of time to invent a tack. Yeah. Now it's coming in dimensions that are, it's like a quickening within a pregnancy.
We are talking about humanism, right?
Yeah.
So I brought here, and I'm kind of, I can show you a quick picture gallery of the people who actually are responsible for contemporary humanism.
Okay, that would be very good. So, I just want to finish that where you're reifying institutions, like we were contained within Australopithecine and then Homo habilis, so we have to anchor it to the caterpillar and the butterfly. We have to anchor it to the historical condition. We have many institutions, political, economic, thoughts about human nature, understandings of things that have come out of philosophical thinking and so forth. But we have coming out of a historical condition as a species within the whole context of the ecological order and so forth. So we want to relate to the future, the capability, but we do want to anchor it appropriately to the structures that have been inherited, so that if you call that being human or humanistically oriented, those institutions, many of those institutional assumptions have to be got over. They've had thoughts about the only way for humans to relate is through war or through reading of them being inherently selfish. All these kind of issues, all these interpretations have been part of the historical thing. The condition may be changing to where you have to be thinking in a new context, but you're right. We have to appropriately link to history, but not inappropriately continue with thoughts that humanism in the new order might be calling for, presenting opportunity for in a new way, and also that we have to avoid in order to avoid the negative aspects of our extended capability or the new capability, which are species lethal now. But the history of humanism, by all
so
means.
let's see quickly. Let's Let's go through quickly the great minds, great minds of humanism, and how it developed until this day.
Okay, let's put this up first. I'm going to put these up, and you can get our focus, and then we'll be coming in on these, Josh. So he's going to talk to these, and then let's see if we can get the camera here focused on that. And we'll put them, there must be 20 or 30 or something. We're
well, about 15.
Okay. Who are we looking at here, then?
This is Professor Roy Wood Sellers. He was the first of the humanist philosophers who defined humanism as a naturalistic philosophy of religion.
A naturalistic philosophy of religion.
Right.
He would be from this century, then? Or?
Yeah. He was.
There were precursors earlier in the Renaissance and so forth, maybe, but okay.
Yeah, but he did it in a way which is like really contemporary.
Okay.
See?
Okay.
The only problem with him is that he counterposed religion or humanism and atheism. In other words, theism is the opposite of humanism.
Okay.
You see, in that respect, I think he was wrong.
Well, perhaps so.
Right.
It's a synergistic universe. We don't know what that future condition will be.
Well,
there has to be room for that's behavior system. There's something more than the sum of the parts.
We will get to it.
And when we get to a point, it may be there's a God. It may be there's a Buddha. There may be God like is thought of by the Christian. It may be that there is no God.
Well, this I don't know.
But the point is, you got to keep an opening upon these different possibilities that will become revealing to us when we get to that point to which this evolutionary process is taking us perhaps beyond the human condition of 200,000 years. Now, you want to put this down and then...
Yeah, I can put it here.
Okay.
Now, the second one I have here is John Dewey, a great founder of humanism.
Okay.
John Dewey defined religion as the conglomeration of the ideal and the real.
Okay.
In other words, the devotion to this process when the real, becomes, when the ideal, which is not real yet, is realized, that is the humanist process of religion. That would be the religion for him. Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Great.
there was another philosopher of humanism, and that was Felix Adler.
Felix Adler. Okay.
Felix Adler,
Here we have another.
He was the founder of what is called the ethical culture movement.
Okay.
And for him, religion was ethics. In other words, ethics is religion. And he developed a whole complex philosophy based on this idea, which was humanistic. See?
Okay.
And he did not heavily push atheism, but he sort of, at one point, he's even saying, if one person can see the deity in oneself and also the deity in the other person, they are related in that higher transcendental form.
That sounds like I and thou.
Yeah,
like Mr. Buber.
Right.
Okay.
Then you had another very important philosopher who was more than a philosopher, and that is Julian Huxley.
Julian Huxley.
A British
He was a great
biologist and
all
sociologist and philosopher.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book entitled religion without revelation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
The Huxley family was all those.
oh
Huxley,
yeah, they were
brother,
Thomas,
Huxley
of course,
was a
they was
huge,
very famous.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing there is, people think that he said, religion without revelation, that means there's no revelation. And they wrote in the British Humanist magazine an article that he's saying this, you know, that he's like, there's no revelation. And he says, I never said there's no revelation.
Right.
I believe in revelation through science.
Right.
Revelation through reason.
You're a great writer.
You see? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed. Yeah.
So I want to show you these, because people are not aware of these people, that they really existed. Here is one called
Another? Okay.
John Dietrich.
Okay.
John Dietrich was one of the founders of American humanism.
Okay.
He was like really heavily rationalist, you know, positivist, kind of humanist that is like almost a materialist. But
Like
he was
August
idealistic. He was a terrific guy, you know.
Like positivism, August.
Well, not positive. I use that word very loosely.
Okay,
you know, I don't use it in terms of a strict philosophy.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about him is, while he was the greatest promoter of humanism, before he died, he reversed himself. And he said, we were wrong, that we were pushing this hardcore, you know, materialist humanism. There is a kind of a different dimension that we have to explore. And as he was reading this, writing this article, in the middle of it, he died.
Yeah.
So we never know what his final conclusion was.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting that, you know, the major founder of organized humanism reversed himself.
Okay, this is an interesting lesson.
Now I show you one of the person who introduced me into humanism, and that is not known too much, and that is Thomas Garrick Masaryk,
No, I don't know.
the first president of Czechoslovakia.
Oh, really? Yeah,
He was a philosopher. He was a
originally.
philosopher, and I was introduced to his book, which made me a humanist.
Really?
His book was entitled Humanistic Ideals. And this book, because he was a philosopher, explains many dimensions of humanism. You know, socialism and rationalism and Nietzsche, and like really substantial and comprehensive. And because I read his book, I said to myself at the age of 17, I'm a humanist.
That's when you got the light,
That's
right?
when I became a
Had
humanist.
you been in a traditional Catholic or otherwise religious
No, I was
Jewish?
originally, as you know, my parents were Jewish.
Yeah, right.
And
you just did escape the Nazi
well,
coming into Prague,
at the age of 13,
you went to
I became an atheist. I rejected my religion.
Okay.
See?
Yeah.
And at the age of 17 or 16, I became a Unitarian officially.
Oh, yeah, Unitarian.
You see, I became a member of the Czech Unitarian Society. So,
Unitarian is very comfortable with
right.
evolving new understanding of intelligence. Yeah.
Then the one person who influenced American humanism most is Corliss Lamont.
God bless Corliss Lamont. Now,
Professor,
this is
it's a very...
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here's a picture. Let me just lay this out. This is Corliss Lamont here.
Right.
The great man. He was the one who stood up to McCarthy early and everything.
He was a fighter for...
He was great. We did programs with him and Beth Lamont, who was a widow and everything. And this is a picture of you, sir.
Right.
With that wonderful wife of yours, Allison. And
when we got married.
And you were married, and was it Corliss who was officiating?
Corliss was officiating my wedding.
As a man of the cloth, or what?
Right. Well, he was. I did it as a humanist.
As a humanist?
Right.
You were married by a humanist. Okay, that's really good.
That's a very unique picture.
That's a handsome picture of you, and boy, I hope you realize how fortunate you are to have been able to have such a person as Allison in your corner.
Yeah.
You're a very fortunate man. I hope you appreciate that every single
Oh yeah,
day.
I'm very.
And I hope she appreciates how fortunate she is.
Very rich in everything except money.
Which is often the case with good people. Yeah.
Now we are going into the
Allison's
next
wonderful.
dimension of humanism,
Yes,
and
sir.
that is humanistic psychology.
Okay.
See, because humanistic psychology really has to do, and people don't want to include this person as a humanist.
Is there two or are they
No,
two?
no,
This is the one.
yeah, give me this back.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay. This is Sigmund Freud.
All right.
I consider him a humanist.
You do.
But
That's
in humanistic psychology, usually he's not included, you know.
You ever realize how we were growing and we were learning, and it was such a long climb up Mount Sisyphus to the understanding and communication that is now going exponential.
You see, he was the great discoverer of the unconscious and of the complexity of the ego that has to be transcended, and how these internal processes function, and how a person can be helped to overcome the unconscious that tyrannizes oneself.
The id, would that be? Yeah,
right,
and then
right,
the super-ego.
right,
Yeah, he gave that.
So he
clear
was a great
understanding.
humanist,
Yeah.
but I just
All right,
wanted to show you the
Okay,
pictures
fair
of
enough,
these
fair enough,
very important
Some
people.
people would take exception to that,
And-
but that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay.
Of
There's
course,
room for
they are all
disagree-
controversial.
Yes, right. And
Everybody, every one of those can be.
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Now, after him, one of his critics, but nevertheless pupils, was Erich Fromm.
Erich Fromm was a
And
giant
Erich
hero
Fromm,
of mine.
what he discovered was unique in that sense that he sort of concentrated on the liberation of the person from the internal obsession, which he considered to be the obsession with the parent.
That sounds
And
like
the
Freud
liberation.
also growing out
Oh
of
yeah,
that,
but he
Yeah,
specifically, you
Yeah.
know, wanted to see the person to give up this internal obsession with the parent and become a liberated person.
He also spoke in universal terms of liberation. That's something that interests me. Erich Fromm was a giant.
Because he was also saying that the majority of people are not able to love.
Yeah.
They think they do,
right,
they
right.
are able to, so to say, neurotically love.
Yeah.
But really love, in that sense, what he's talking about, caring, respect, responsibility, understanding, joy, and so on.
And this is all building within the scientific revolution that's going in part of our time, which is coming to a culmination now.
Absolutely.
Scientific and human.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And he was also a great critic of both
Yeah.
capitalism
Yes,
and totalitarian communism.
Right.
you see?
Right.
Then, after him...
Which is still needed.
Yeah. After him, another giant was Carl Rogers.
Oh, yeah, Carl Rogers, yes.
Carl Rogers, he considered the most important person in the psychological sense is the ability to feel.
Yeah.
Because if the person cannot...
Rollo May.
Rollo May too.
Was another one.
Right, of course.
Stamp, right.
But
as opposed to, let's say, B.F. Skinner, I would say. Behavioralism
that's
is another
a different,
ball of wax.
right. I didn't include Skinner because Skinner was specifically he presented a mechanistic concept of the emotional apparatus
You
of
wrote
a person.
book once, Beyond Freedom and Dignity,
That's
which
right.
was an interesting title for a book. Anyway,
So this is Carl Rogers.
So the psychologists and people have different takes on things, but this is a humanistic trend.
Carl Rogers,
No,
you
he
see,
was beautiful, Carl Rogers.
he wrote this book on becoming a person, where he's showing that only the developed person is capable of expressing feelings in the here and now. If they are not developed, they won't express feelings about the here and now. They will talk about something that happened in the future to other people, you know, and so on. But to be in the here and now and having that I-thou relationship that Buber's talking about, you see, he didn't have that.
Now you were associated with Buber in the old days, and
I was involved with Buber. That's right.
And Judas Magnus.
Not Judah Magnus.
Not you.
No. But with Martin Buber, I was involved.
Yes, you represented him, I think.
Not as a. I was the man in the United States who was activating their peace movement in Israel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
But I can't call myself a representative. I could call myself an activist.
In support of,
that was in intimate contact with the leaders there.
You were in good company, sir, all your life, it seems to me. Yeah.
Then the next person who represents humanism is Abraham Maslow. Maslow came up with the hierarchy of needs, but the main thing that he came up with was self-actualization, which means a person becoming actually what one is potentially.
I wonder if we can extend that idea to somebody realizing their full potential, to the idea of Gaia, to where it would be something different in terms of an individual to doing that, like a great impresario or something, but that a whole system doing that, a whole system of maximal engagement by, let's just say for the heck of it, the whole of the human society was able to realize their full potential and get a synergistic resonancy more than the sum of a maximally engaged humanity. That might be the mission of the evolutionary process if we're going to make this transition to another area, another relationship to the cosmos at another level transcendent to the... We may be at a time of speciation or moving toward metaphors of speciation in terms of awakening from the nightmare of history that James Joyce had Daedalus referred to. But do you understand what I'm saying? So many people are not able to realize, only a few are able to have the material or otherwise capability to realize in an unalienated kind of way their own potentiality. It should be where everybody can, and we may be the promise of the time which we find now.
He said
liberation may be at hand.
Maslow said something very interesting that most people are not aware of it. He said, psychotherapy doesn't work because there are not enough therapists, and people don't have money to be in therapy. And I am adding to it also, they don't have the ability to want therapy, you see? So therapy is not the solution.
Well, we're gestating. It's a gestating thing, isn't it? I mean, you could have lived 6,000 years ago, and you'd be wandering around, and you would have a long way off being able... Do you understand that it's a gestation process? Humanity was contained in Homo habilis, or it's intrinsic. The organic process was contained, apparently, or one doesn't know, 3.8 billion years ago? There was no organic process on this planet at all, but it seemed to be that something happened that began that. So it was there's an inherent emergence of consciousness, even if you take it. Fuller predicted, or he said that you got the second law of thermodynamics, which says all systems move toward chaos, to the entropy, to the limits of the system, if it's a closed system. And now with string theory, we do not know whether the universe is closed or open. It may be that it is the mathematics of string theory seems to suggest this universe, 13.8 billion years ago, we're taking the photograph of that occurrence 13.8 billion years ago. That's an incredible capability of this human consciousness to take the measure of things rather than just relate in an instinctual kind of way to an environmental process that's been going on 3.8 billion years. That this is the condition in which we live now. It's no wonder there's a great deal of angst loose in the world at all levels, political, economic, because we're coming to a new relationship that's unparalleled, and we have no historical, models for what
we don't
is
have
emerging.
we don't have
Perhaps.
also the human development to cope with the technological product.
Well, with all
progress.
due respect, sir, I think
See?
we've had if we read that the human development is their purpose here is to kill other human beings, we're getting better at it all the time. We got weapon systems now that
In
can
other
wipe
words,
out the whole species.
the better we are getting,
And if you say that's what you're here for, is to kill other human beings, which seems to have been the mission of many of our political leadership, even up to the present moment, then you say that's the human being, is to torture people, to have ovens to stick people in, and to do the kinds of things they've done for some political advantage to themselves. I wouldn't say we want to adopt all of the human characteristics that are part of the nightmare of unjust system that Mr. James Joyce said is a nightmare of unjust things. We don't want to keep all those human characters. We want to transcend them and come into a new order that maybe we are.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well,
that's part of the humanistic
or
the scientific mission or the evolution of consciousness. We may be awakened, leaving the womb, something into existentially new in universe, this moment. It's hard to think that that could be the case because everybody's used to just saying, well, maybe in a couple thousand years we'll finally get to have some humanity characteristic of our institutions. We don't have it yet. It's still all for the benefit of the rich and powerful, and we don't have a system that the future requires in order for there to be a liberation of the human spirit of everybody rather than just a few people. But I didn't mean to go, but...
Well, I wanted to mention
and they
another...
use God and so forth in order to coerce or subsume or co-opt the people in order to get political power for some
Here
group.
you have Bucky Fuller.
God bless Bucky Fuller.
Buckminster Fuller.
Yes, sir. I would celebrate
He
him
was really
endlessly.
one of the geniuses of our time.
I couldn't agree with you more.
He was introducing the global approach to everything that he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He was also very much concerned. He invented lots of neologism.
Yes,
He had a language that you had to first study, the meaning of his new words. Syntactism and things like that.
Well, he did. He would give lectures. I've studied the man in great detail, read his work and everything, and admire him endlessly. I think he's the best mind I've ever been able to come up with. But he used to talk to an audience of thousands of people, just what, a few centuries, a few decades ago. And has anybody heard of the word synergy?
Yeah.
His work is called synergetic. The universe is synergetic.
That's right.
Reality is synergetic. Behavioral systems going through time that you cannot know. There's no absolutes. Because if you get to another level of relationship, it might be a resonancy that'll interaccommodate human consciousness with the universe at another level. And even if you do, that will be within an a priori mysterious design in terms of the ultimate. We may be going through wormholes.
Right,
We're coming into. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, of course.
So if somebody says, "Well, God did it," that's nice and easy to deal with self-reflective consciousness, but to do it, but without scientific understanding, we're coming to understand it now all the time. So there's a conflict between the creation myths and so forth that poor humanity had to set up in order to deal with this capability of understanding things in a comprehensive way.
Well,
and with what was emerging. Yeah, we ought to be a little easy on humanity, particularly historically looking back. They were in ignorance. And then 180,000 years before we got to civilization of wandering around in the wilderness eating berries that would kill us with regularity. I'm sorry. Here's Bucky Fuller.
Yeah,
endlessly
a great
supportive
humanist,
of the man.
a great humanist.
Yes, indeed.
Now, I wanted to say something about intuition.
Okay, he wrote a book. His major book was Intuition.
Yeah, many humanists sort of are poo-pooing on that word. It's, oh, sure. Usually people make the distinction between intellect versus intuition.
Okay.
But there's no such thing. Intellect and intuition go together.
Okay.
Intellect is influenced by intuition, and intuition is influenced by the intellect.
We do know.
So I just brought this.
Yeah, we do know there's the two hemispheres of the human brain.
Right.
There's male and female. There's up and down. There's black and white. There's all those kind of dualities within the universe. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So there is a humanist concept and philosophy of intuition.
Okay.
And the exponent or proponent of this idea is a psychologist with the name Ruth Cohen, whom I knew very well.
Ruth Cohen, I knew Ruth Cohen.
Yes.
She did the UN thing.
She was.
Did she live in Westport?
No,
I'm sorry.
Now she lived for many years in Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
But she lived in the United States.
Okay.
And she developed a concept of intuition, which analyzes the process. And she says that in order to be intuitive, you have to have, first of all, a large accumulation of data, of experience. You cannot be you cannot be intuitive without a large accumulation of experience.
All right.
Secondly, you have to have an open mind.
Okay, good. Yeah, right.
And third, you have to relate to the environment with a certain degree of compassion in order to accept everything as it comes.
Yeah, and also there were people who would say that I had a friend who was in the room with Norbert Wiener when they coined the term, I think it was 1948, cyber.
The cyber, right.
And cyber is steersman, right? But he reckoned information overload. If you have information overload, we're being overloaded with information compared to what we had in the past. We're being and what it does is it permits pattern recognition. So you can see patterns between systems. It's called systems thinking. You can see patterns between a lot of systems rather than burrowing in depth to one, and be empathetically able to be inclusive of many different systems and the relationship between them. It's a resonancy between them. So you can have a systems understanding, a comprehensive understanding that hasn't been possible to us in the past. And our educational system is all galloping towards specialization, making the intellectual exercise innocuous in terms of thinking about the large patterns that intellect should be concerned with, it seems to me.
Yeah.
If you understand.
Yeah. Can they see this on the picture?
Well, they did before. We had it up.
Okay.
It was just that I was rambling. Okay.
So now, here is the greatest statement about the intuitive mind by one of the, if not the genius of all times, Albert Einstein. And see what it says.
I can't read it. Can you read it for us, Joseph?
The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift.
That's
Albert Einstein.
Uh-huh.
That's him.
Well, rationale, he was wonderful. He hated patriotism.
Yeah.
I got a quote on my thing how much he hated patriotism, and he was a great physicist, and a lot of people, there's a lot of good quotes from Einstein.
Now
he had a great sense of humor too.
Oh.
I think people do have a good sense of humor that are of a humanist bent.
Yeah,
and are intelligent.
Right. He was not wearing clothes like a hippie, but like a beatnik.
Yes, right. That's right.
Here I have a picture of something, how to respond to this whole situation. And that is
the human condition, you mean?
What?
The human condition, the whole situation?
Well, not in that big sense, in a small sense.
In a small sense.
And that is what the humanists did when I was president of the Humanist Society of Greater New York. We had something called interactive dialogical groups.
Okay.
And here you see one of those groups, how they are relating to each other and developing developing this I-thou attitude. You see, And if there would be thousands of groups like that, I mean, I did it with young people, but it can be done with people of all ages.
This is 1970, that magic year.
That's right.
I think there's a case to be made, Joseph, for 1970 will be seen in the fullness of time as year one.
That's right.
There were things going on existentially at that time that were, not the least of which were these seminars you were putting on with Mr. Einstein overseeing them. Who's the picture in the, is that Joan Baez over behind the
Yeah, that's Joan Baez and Albert Einstein.
And you could
and you see the sign, the American Humanist.
Was reading the Zeitgeist really well with his poetry and his songs. Yeah.
Well, I'm giving tomorrow a lecture about the hippies, so that will be included.
I want to be there. Okay. Yeah.
Now the last two pictures that I have have to do. One is a kind of a, I don't know, peculiar picture.
Okay. Peculiar.
It represents.
Peculiar
it
picture.
represents the many, many religious organizations in New York. It was the main spread in the New York Magazine. And you can see me right in the middle.
Right in the middle of that
Right in the middle. Yeah.
conglomeration.
It's right there in the middle.
Those are all representatives of humanism
of all the religions.
Ministers of religion.
Of you know, like 30
I don't
or
see any Catholic cardinals.
Well, there are some there.
Are there
there are
Buddhists
some Catholics there too.
Okay.
But there are Hindus and, you know, and Orthodox Jews and everybody.
Yeah,
and I am there as a humanist minister.
And
So-
these things have great meaning to a great number of people. These religious traditions and sacred traditions, and it's a source of ethics and solace to people, and has been for a long time, and is not to be dismissed lightly. And it may be many of these may, in the fullness of a synergistic, evolving understanding of things at a higher order, might actually be discovered to have been really relevant. So there's nothing absolute yes or no that can be relevant to what the future is heralding now.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's no absolutes that you can impose upon it. And Mr. Fuller came up with the term synergy for the behavioral systems unpredicted by the sum of the parts. And that's the resonance that interconnects systems. It seems to be all there is resonancy. And so we should have an appreciation of that, it would seem. That's a wonderful picture, though. Where are you? I can't see you.
I'm in the middle with that red sash. You see, right?
Oh, that's you there. Sure.
Right here.
They're right in the middle of it. You were right in the middle of the
they put me in the middle. They like
That's great.
They like how I look.
There you go.
That's
there he
me.
is. Oh, sure enough. Sure
right.
enough. I've done programs with you in that side.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. That's not a long.
That's
that's
relatively
a fairly.
recent. Okay, very good.
Now I show you the
Now
last two pictures.
Of course, you sound out like, you know, you stand out. Yeah.
Now I show you now the last two pictures.
Oh, that's handsome. Greek Orthodox. Yeah, that's good. That was in the New York Magazine.
Yeah.
Okay, we only got about five minutes left.
Yeah.
So.
Why I was so interested in humanism.
Yeah.
Here is a very, very unique picture.
Okay.
It's a picture in Prague.
This is in Prague. That's where your roots are.
That's where I grew up. About 250 years ago. It's a drawing of a main plaza in Prague. And I was going to school right behind those buildings. But people don't know that this plaza, which is today a place where there are restaurants and people are happy, that this was a torture place and an execution plaza.
Yeah.
You can see people beheaded and people cut into pieces, quartered and beaten to death and
back in
hung.
Medieval times?
Yeah,
more
250 or 300 years ago. So I was very much aware of that when I was walking to school every day over this plaza.
Yeah, right.
So that created a kind of a sense of compassion against suffering in me.
Suffering
against suffering humanity.
Yeah. And it continues.
It continued.
And it may be that the suffering that we've had to put up with and the injustice, it may be coming necessarily to the point when you get to weapons that can wipe out the species on the side of liberation, it may be that we're getting to a point where we're overcoming the need for there to be universal unjust systems, which have been characteristic of all of human history.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I show you the last
I only got
picture.
a couple minutes. It's got to be the last.
This
because
is the last
coming
one.
To the end, the last.
This is how I expressed the thing, my attitude through playing through a one-person show, and I'm featured there in 6 different roles: as a fanatic Christian, as Hitler, as Jesus when he comes back as a scientist and social activist, Jesus how he was when they crucified him or before him crucified him, and Jewish fanatic, and a professor of humanistic psychology.
Okay.
So I'm, you know, in this show, it's a 2-hour show.
Yeah. Okay. I know you've got it actually on tape, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was shown for a couple of months in a little theater on Broadway.
So you're in show business.
So I was also in show business.
Yeah.
But I was not paid because
paid.
I took a vow of poverty 35 years ago, and I never paid for anything.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, you didn't follow which. I think that if there's any one thing that motivates, let's say, the structuring of the modern world, it seems to me if there's anything else, like the mortar that holds it together, it's money.
Yeah.
It seems to be the only thing anybody's interested in or able to be interested in, and it's going more so all the time, is how in the world am I going to live? How am I going to continue to live materialistically when we have an overwhelming cornucopia of providing for everyone within an ecological context and the environmental situation? We have the ability that's evolved and the capability, but we don't have the systems in place that allow us to realize what we're capable of in a new and liberating way, and that's the condition that has to be overcome, maybe through humanism and compassion and some of the best things that have come out of that humanistic tradition, but it does want to also relate to history and also be easier on people who have, after all, not been able to be living in the very crucial time. Chinese say warn against living in interesting times. These are the most interesting times.
Well, let me tell you
very alienating, worrisome.
How I try to keep.
We only got a few seconds.
How I try to keep people happy.
How do you keep people happy?
By marrying them.
By marrying. Here are a number of marriage ceremonies.
Here they are.
If you can put it against the graphic, maybe. I don't know if you can.
Maybe it will show against the graphic.
He's married a number of people as a reverend and a Unitarian humanist and social activist. It's a proud tradition. It's one that we ought to repair to and then fit it into larger understandings, because the humanist tradition, as you've indicated, is a very, very liberating one, and it's one that's called for and something that we're dealing with this whole week of programming on that issue. Congratulations, Reverend. Thank you very much for coming in for the program and for such a very, very well-led life. Thank you very much for that. And in the audience, we invite you